I would like to go on the record of saying that Kendrick is absolutely full of shit. Hey, Happy New Year and welcome to my channel. I'm Camille. This is Kendrick Lamar, and today we're checking out this iconic video to see if we can figure out who's in the casket. But in order to even try to make an educated guess, we've got to dig through 3 years of backstory, so let's jump right in. Ever since Kendrick was officially declared the winner of the Great Rap Civil War of 2024, every publication from Rolling Stone to Time Magazine has written some kind of timeline or breakdown of the Drake versus Kendrick beef. One thing they all seem to agree on is that the beef started after Kendrick dropped this verse in 2013.
And that goes for Jamaica, Big Crit Wale, Pusha T, Meek Mills, A$AP Rocky, Drake, Big Sean, Jay Electron, Tyler McMillan. I got love for you all, but I'm trying to murder you niggas.
Most rational people hear this verse and they understand that the names that he mentions are people that he sees as peers, and this verse was in the name of hip-hop and like good-natured competition. Nothing personal. Now, some of the people that he mentioned in the song did fire back, but like Kendrick, they treated it like a sport. Nothing personal. Drake was a whole different story. The boy took it personal. Like, I'm gonna unfollow you personal.
I'm probably like as done as like the rest of the world is with that record. Like, I think it came and it went, you know, he'll be all right, you know what I'm saying? Even if it doesn't feature, you know, any of the names that he mentioned, which it probably won't, to be honest with you.
So if you take all these articles and the way they break it down at face value, then Kendrick and Drake were cool until 2013, and then it basically started because Kendrick dropped a verse and Drake was being a big baby about it. However, there has been this theory floating around for a while now that somehow Kendrick found out that Drake has ghostwriters and sneakily got him to tell on himself in the song Poetic Justice with the line,
But I can never right my wrongs unless I write them down for real, P.S.
Now, this is a pretty old theory because I saw this on YouTube a long time ago, but I don't actually remember the details. What I just told you is basically what I remember. So I was getting ready for this video and I was about to look up the theory because I want to talk about it, but I decided I'm going to wait. Since I'm aware of the theory, but I don't remember the details of the theory, I thought it would actually be more fun for me to do my own research and see what connections I can make on my own, and then go back and look at the poetic justice theory in the next video. I'm a little annoyed with myself because I've been trying to watch these videos in the order that they came out, and poetic justice came out first. But once I started down this rabbit hole, there was no turning back, and it led me to this song instead.
Bitch, don't kill my vibe. Bitch, don't kill my vibe.
I think that I'm going to be able to lay out a case that Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe could actually just be called Buried Alive Part 2. Buried Alive is easy to forget because it's just a quick little interlude on Drake's album Take Care.
I jump right in and fall asleep. I fall asleep. Cut you because you are the death of me.
I actually figured this out by accident, but if you listen to Buried Alive and Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe back to back, story-wise, it could be just one long song with a beat switch. To me, it sounds like he wrote the verse in 2011, took a break and thought about it for a while, switched the beat up, and finished it a year later. Now, once you put the pieces together, it actually seems pretty obvious, so I know I cannot be the only person in the world to make this connection, but I genuinely came to this conclusion on my own. First off, the Buried Alive interlude is 15 years old. I forgot it even existed until I started making these videos. Second of all, this was back in the day when we were still listening to CDs, so once I heard an interlude once or twice, like, I'm done, I don't need to hear it anymore, I'm skipping that shit. I never paid attention to the words of Buried Alive until just now. Now, I'm sure that TikTok probably figured this out years ago, but I don't really do TikTok, so when the pieces started clicking together for me, I felt like I just solved the Da Vinci Code. So let's start out with a basic timeline. In 2011, Kendrick is doing a show in Toronto.
Is this Toronto motherfucking Canada or what? Come on out.
So Drake calls him up while he's out there, and Kendrick is able to give him a copy of his new album, Section 80. And so Drake listens to this, and he's so impressed that he wants Kendrick to do a song on his new album, and he invites him on tour. So to return the favor, Kendrick invites Drake to do a feature on his next album.
Poetic justice, poetic justice. If I told you that a flower bloomed in a dark room, would you trust it?
And then around the same time that Good Kid, Mad City dropped, They collaborated one last time with 2 Chainz and A$AP Rocky on this song.
But this long dick nigga ain't for the long talking, I beats. A long pair of bitches got my fucking problem.
So this is basically what the magazines say, and according to this version of the story, they seem like they were pretty cool and pretty supportive of each other all the way up until 2013 when Drake took shit personal. That's a little too basic for me, so of course I started digging a little deeper, and I immediately see that there are a lot of important details that all these big magazines, Time Magazine, Rolling Stone, all these places, there's a lot of pretty important details that they leave out, like how big of a deal it was the first time Kendrick and Drake ever met. Kendrick didn't just give Drake a CD and that was that. They went out to dinner and had a conversation that seems like it could have been one of the most important conversations in Kendrick's career. They were the same age, but at the time of their meeting, Drake was a step ahead. Kendrick was just about to release his first album, while Drake was about to release his second. They both started rapping around the same age, but success came a little quicker for Drake, and Kendrick was playing catch up. Like I said in a previous video, Drake's life played out like a perfectly scripted movie, and 2010 was the summer he turned pretty. With Drake a little further along in his career, it's likely that he offered Kendrick a lot of advice this night, and Kendrick, ever the sponge of his environment, soaked it all in. How do we know this? Because he told us. Drake was so eager to work with Kendrick that he gave him a beat and he told him that he could do whatever he wanted to do and that he was going to put it on his album. Kendrick decided to write about the first time that he ever met Drake, and he called it Buried Alive. In an interview with MTV, and I'm paraphrasing this a little bit, Drake called me and said he had a beat that 40 did and he wanted me on it. He told me to do whatever I feel on the record, so the first thing that came to mind was the first time that I met him. I was a fan and followed his music, and I kind of had an idea where he was at in his career. He's in a space where vanity can be a definite crutch if you're in denial, but Drake's honest. He acknowledges his vices and faults. First off, his use of the word vanity over a more generic word like fame. This word's going to come up a couple more times, so let's define it. According to the Oxford Dictionary, vanity means excessive pride in or admiration of one's own appearance or achievements. So he's saying that Drake is in a place where having excessive pride in his achievements could be a crutch. However, Drake is honest and acknowledges his vices and faults. But if you really think about it, this ain't a compliment. If you know somebody that's an asshole, does them acknowledging that they're an asshole make them any less of an asshole? Like a person will be like, I know I can be an asshole sometimes, but nothing. How about you just not be an asshole? Just acknowledging it doesn't change anything. Anyway, before we get into the lyrics, this is what Kendrick had to say about this verse. I wanted to speak from a standpoint of being a new artist watching everything that's killing him and wanting to die. We all want a taste of vanity. I saw a taste of it that night I met homie. Black Maybach, white waitress, private dinner with crew, blah, 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 blah. All of this was in homie's possession that night, and in that moment, I wanted it. The conversation that night was real. Am I ready to accept this lifestyle? And then I die is where I end the verse. And when it comes to this, what he just said, I want you to make a little mental note. He said, this is where I end the verse, not this is where the verse ends. Make note of that. It starts out with Kendrick stuttering through the lines. If you was in a pine box, I would surely break the lock. I'd jump right in and fall asleep because you were the death of me. Then he starts the verse by saying, looking in the mirror, I'm embarrassed. I'm feeling like a suicidal terrorist. React like an infant whenever you're mentioned. Who is the you that he's talking about? Well, he tells us in just a couple of lines. I was greeted by an alien that said last year she slept with a Canadian that gave him an addiction that keep him in Mercedes-Benz, bright lights, and Rihanna as a lady friend. So he's being very obvious. This is on Drake's album, so of course he's being obvious. He's talking about Drake, right? Also, he has referred to women as aliens in the past, but I think in this verse, the alien represents vanity, and she just happens to be a woman. Then we get to the part where he describes dinner that night. Sat down with a few drinks, located where they can't see us, a white waitress on standby when we need her. So this is a place that's expensive enough to have private rooms and a dedicated waitress. So I'm sure for Kendrick, hell, I'm sure for almost all of us, to eat in a place that has a private room and a waitress, that's rare, right? That has to be wild. I just wanted to see for myself. I just Googled expensive restaurants in Toronto, and the first place that came up that actually has private dining sells $300 steaks. But to be honest, Drake does seem like the type of person, knowing that he's meeting up with a rookie in the game to take him to a place like that to flex on him, because Drake's been going to places like this for a long time now.
It's not. It's really ignorant.
Oh, rude. That's rude.
Black Maybach, 40 pull-up Jeep, no doors, all that engine was missing was Aaliyah. He's basically saying that when Drake and his crew pulled up, they looked like a damn music video. There's actually more to that Aaliyah part, but I'm gonna leave that alone. Now this is a big line. Felt like the initiation, a reality living in the Matrix. Matrix is how he often describes fame and how it's like an alternate reality. And this Matrix theme is something that he's carried throughout his entire career. And he's saying right here that meeting Drake that night felt like an initiation to the Matrix. So like the first time that he ever experienced any shit like this up close and personal was with Drake. We talked casually about the industry and how the women be the tastemakers for the shit we making. Then he said he was the same age as myself, and it didn't help because it made me even more rude and impatient. So when he realized they were the same age and Drake had accomplished more than him, it made him even more impatient to get to that point. So blame it on Mr. OVOXO, the reason why I'm breathing all the vanity I know, the reason why my best friends say she loved me more than life, but I live a double life and I need to let her go. The reason why the highlight was when he said, you belong to the people when you outside. So dig a shovel full of money, full of power, full of pussy, full of fame, and bury yourself alive. And then I died. That's a lot going on right there. In XXL magazine, Kendrick said, at the end of that verse, that's him in the conversation. Him telling me that you have to accept this lifestyle because all of that will come and it's up to you how far you're going to go with it or how much you're going to let it in. Me acknowledging that when I say, then I died, it leaves it hanging on the audience trying to figure out where I would go with it. Will I let it taint me or destroy me? Or will I know how to deal with it? He wants the audience to come to their conclusion on what he means, which, of course, looking at it today, it's very obvious, but you got to keep in mind that this was back in 2011. This was still Section 80 K. Kenny. We didn't have this full body of work to understand him as well as we do today. So let's break this down a little bit. Blame it on Mr. OVOXO, the reason why I'm breathing all the vanity I know. He's saying that the only reason that he's even in the atmosphere to breathe this level of vanity is because of that night with Drake. It felt like the introduction to the Matrix. Now, I'm sure that he had met other celebrities at this point in his career, but he's basically saying that meeting Drake was on a whole different level. My best friends say she loved me more than life, but I live a double life and need to let her go. He isn't saying that he is living a double life. He wasn't famous yet, but he was about to be. But it seems like he's saying that according to Drake, fame is going to force him into a double life and that he might have to consider letting Whitney go. The highlight was when he said, you belong to the people when you outside. He literally calls this the highlight of everything that Drake said that night. You belong to the people when you outside. Kendrick notoriously does not belong to the people outside. He puts his music out, he does a tour, and then he vanishes. But not even he knew that he was going to be this way back in 2011 when he dropped this. But it seems like Kendrick has spent the rest of his career trying to prove that statement wrong. So dig a shovel full of money, and instead of saying dig a hole, he says dig a shovel. I have no idea. It's weird. But anyway, so dig a shovel full of money, full of power, full of pussy, full of fame, and bury yourself alive. Then I died. Now, trying to think of where they were at that point, they were probably about 25. So when they're having this conversation, I honestly doubt that Drake was actually coming from a place of caution, but rather like being famous is fun. And if you want to be famous, yeah, there's like sacrifices that you're going to have to make, but all those sacrifices are worth it. But going back to that XXL interview, Kendrick said, all of this was in homie's possession that night. And in that moment, I wanted it. The conversation that night was real. Am I ready to accept this lifestyle? Then I died is where I end the verse. But just because a verse ends there doesn't mean it actually ends there. You always got to look at like what he did because he likes to talk in circles. So if you go back to the beginning of the verse, he says, looking in the mirror, I'm embarrassed, feeling like a suicidal terrorist. So Kendrick meets Drake back in the summer of 2011. And at that point, Drake seemed to have every single thing that Kendrick was striving for. And in that moment, he was envious. But after that meeting, after reflecting, looking in the mirror, I'm embarrassed. He got a glimpse of who Drake was and what he had to do for this fame. and he decided that if he went down that same route, it was going to kill him. Now, that's what I think he's saying, but let's move on to 2012. So in February of 2012, Kendrick and A$AP Rocky opened for Drake's Club Paradise tour.
This is my brother A$AP Rocky. This is my brother Kendrick Lamar. This is my brother Chasing Cash.
And Kendrick didn't do the entire 36 shows because he got invited to do some other big shows like South by Southwest and Coachella. But this was a good 2.5 months that they got to spend together, so Kendrick did get to see Drake in his natural environment. So after that tour's over, he takes a little 2-month break through May and June, and then July he's back out on the road where he's opening for Wiz Khalifa and Mac Miller. Almost as soon as this tour ends, he's out on the road again on another tour, but this time he's headlining the BET Music Matters tour. And this was a 23-city tour, so it took a while, but after that tour ended, he dropped Good Kid, Mad City. He was traveling so much in 2012, it tells me that the bulk of the work for Good Kid, Mad City was done when he took that 2-month break, because other than that, he was on the road. But there's evidence that he was working on at least one song up until the very last minute. His album was due to come out in October, and October 14th or 15th of that year, Lady Gaga announces that her and Kendrick just did a song together and it's going to be released on September 6th. Well, the day comes and goes and the song doesn't get released, and just a couple of weeks later, the album's released with a different version of the song. From everything that I can read from Kendrick's side and from Gaga's side, it was like a timing issue. Now, had they released Lady Gaga's version, it would have been the 3rd single that he released off the album, but he ended up saving it as the last release and the last video off of the album. Now, if you haven't heard Lady Gaga's version, here's a clip really fast.
Bitch, don't kill my vibe. Bitch, don't kill my vibe. I can feel your energy from 2 planets away. I got my drink, I got my music. I will share it, but today I'm feeling. Bitch, don't kill my vibe.
Now, I'm only mentioning this Gaga stuff to point out that Kendrick was working on this song to the very last minute before the album dropped. It stands out a little bit on the album because it steps away from the main story of Kendrick and being a teenager, and this song we get Kendrick like is as present day in his present voice. Also, there's not a lot of connective tissue between like what the song is about and what's happening in the video. So let's run through the video real fast and then we'll dig into the lyrics. So this is another video directed by Kendrick and Dave Free with the help of someone named OG Mike Mihail. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But anyway, the video starts in the same church that Kendrick filmed Backseat Freestyle. It opens up with a little girl hiding behind a pew, and then these 3 guys, and I think they represent 3 angels, they come to her. Then we see another little girl, and she's not scared, she's not hiding, she's up front and she's praying. Then we see that Kendrick is at a funeral where everybody is wearing all white, but he's sitting way in the back all by himself. There are only 3 locations for the video: the church, an empty field, and a limo. Now, if you saw my Backseat Freestyle video where I talked about the story of the Good Shepherd, then Kendrick standing in this field really looks like a shepherd waiting on his flock, don't he? Pretty wild, huh? He walks to the front of the church to pay his respects, and then they load up the casket, and then we start jumping back and forth between Kendrick alone in the limo and then Kendrick in a crowded limo where everybody's partying and drinking and having a good time. Then we get this funny Mike Epps scene.
I thought you said baptized in a pool full of liquor.
Everyone arrives at the burial site, and at first it's a little sad and demure, but then it turns into a party. Kendrick and Mike Epps are taking really candid shots in front of the casket, and again, I'm not religious, but it seems like that's not something that you should do. And then the video cuts to black screen with white lettering that says "Death to Molly." So who's in the casket? Well, if you take the video at face value, then it seems like it signifies the eventual death of drug culture in hip hop. That's why the funeral is a celebration, because we should be happy at that death. But if you ignore the whole Molly thing and just focus on the lyrics, this song ain't got shit to do with Molly. So last year, he ends the verse saying, "Then I died." He opens this song with a prayer. "I'm a sinner who's probably going to sin again. Lord, forgive me. Things I don't understand." He's admitting that he made mistakes and he's begging for forgiveness. Sometimes I need to be alone. Bitch, don't kill my vibe. Bitch, don't kill my vibe. I can feel your energy from 2 planets away. I got my drink, I got my music, I will share it. But today I'm yelling, bitch, don't kill my vibe. In Buried Alive, he said he met an alien that slept with a Canadian. And if that alien is representative of vanity, he's saying, like, I can feel that loud ass energy from 2 planets away and I would much rather be alone. And when they ask Kendrick, what is this song about? He says, that's really one big subliminal that everybody getting mixed in a situation where everyone wants creative control. That's the vibe I wanted to kill. That's why I threw that record out there. If you listen to some of the words, it's really intricate, but it makes sense. I would like to go on the record of saying that Kendrick is absolutely full of shit. This song doesn't have anything to do with creative control. And this song, honestly, really doesn't have anything to do with Molly, except for the fact that he put it at the end of the video. Where he is being honest is that this song is one big subliminal, and if you listen, it is intricate and starts to make sense. But let's continue on, and you tell me who you think the you is that he's referring to in these lyrics. Look inside my soul, and you can find gold and maybe get rich. Look inside your soul and you can find out it never exists. He's saying that you look inside of him, there is substance, and within that substance, there's value. But look inside of you and you don't have a soul. I can feel the changes. I can feel a new life. I always knew life could be dangerous. This one's pretty self-explanatory. I can say that I like a challenge and you tell me it's painless. You don't know what pain is. Definitely coming back to these 2 lines right here, but moving on for now. How can I paint this picture when the colorblind is hanging with ya? Fell on my face and awoke with a scar, another mistake leaving deep in my heart. So again, he's acknowledging this mistake that he made. Wear it on top of my sleeve in a flick. I can admit it did look like yours. So I think he's saying it's a mistake that he can easily brush off, and then I can admit it did look like yours. I'm not exactly sure, but he's comparing himself to somebody, and who you think he's comparing himself to? Why you resent every making of this, tell me your purpose is petty again. He's saying if you're in this for the money, then your purpose is petty. But even a small lighter can burn a bridge, but even a small lighter can burn a bridge. He's saying even a small lighter can burn a bridge. Who we burning bridges with, Kendrick? Now, I can see how it would be easy to hear this back in 2012 and think that he's just kind of speaking in general terms. Symbolically, his words can mean a lot of different things. So what makes me so confident that he's talking about Drake, right? Well, I found this article from way back in 2012 that was like on the Wayback Machine. Like, you can't even Google this shit. You got to go hunt for it. After they're done touring and Kendrick is on that little 2-month break in the summer, Drake is starting up the second leg of his tour and he's doing a lot of press. So he does this show in Detroit and he does an interview for the local Detroit paper. And again, this was back in 2012. Yeah, there were some blogs and stuff, but like, this is a local Detroit paper. You probably didn't ever hear about this interview unless you lived in Detroit and read the damn paper. So anyway, Drake is asked about the challenge of reliving his emotional songs on stage every night. Any piece of music that I put out, I'm proud of the emotion. It's something I went through in my life and it's not painful. Again, it's not painful. I mean, sometimes it's tough to do songs like Look What You've Done when my mom is at the show or my uncle or my dad. It gets kind of awkward for me to talk about such personal feelings in front of other people, but at the same time, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I get to make records come to life and people are listening to what I'm saying. So it's not necessarily painful or anything like that. None of my songs are ever pained emotions. I just really write about what's going on around me, and none of that is bad. Drake said in this interview, the emotions in his music are not painful, and none of the songs are ever pained emotions. Kendrick said, I can say I like a challenge and you tell me it's painless. You don't know what pain is. Who is he talking to? Need some more? Here's a pretty obvious one. I can feel the changes. I can feel the new people around me just want to be famous.
Only you like being famous.
You can see that my city found me, then put me on stages. He's saying that his talent and the support of his city is what got him on stages, not Drake inviting him on tour. See, around the time that Kendrick was doing a bulk of the work for this album. That's when Drake was doing all his little press tours and stuff. And when he's talking about the tour, he's still talking about Kendrick like a little brother. He would say things like, I'm glad I was able to give him the opportunity. I'm glad that I was able to give him the exposure. Like he's taking the credit for Kendrick's success. So this line is him saying, nah, it ain't you, bruh. I would have got here on my own. And like I said, he toured with Drake for 2 months at the beginning of summer, but he stayed on the road damn near the whole year. He toured with a lot of people. So he says, to me, that's amazing. To you, that's a quick check. With all disrespect, let me say this. Need some more? I'm trying to keep it alive and not compromise the feeling we love. You're trying to keep it deprived and only co-sign what the radio does. And I'm looking right past you. We live in a world on 2 different axles. Who could he possibly be talking about? You live in a world you live in behind the mirror. So in Buried Alive, he's saying after this meeting with Drake, upon reflection, looking in the mirror, he was embarrassed. The person he's talking to right here can't even look in the mirror because they're living behind it. I know what you're scared of. The feeling of feeling emotions inferior. This shit is vital. I know you had to. This shit is vital. I know you had to. This goes right along with Drake saying that his songs and his emotions are not painful. This is something you can blame on yourself. You can remain stuck in a box. I'm going to break out and hide every lock. I'm going to break out and hide every lock. And remember, he opened Buried Alive. If you was in a pine box, I'd surely break the lock. I'd jump right in and I'd fall asleep because you were the death of me. I don't think there's any way in the whole wide world that Drake hears that line about the box and doesn't start thinking, wait a minute, who's he talking about? Is he saying that I am you? Is he saying that I'm the one with no soul that doesn't know what pain is? Is he saying that I'm the one living behind the mirror? Now, let's say that Drake does realize that these are shots fired at him. How does he begin to respond to this without exposing himself in the process? Publicly, Kendrick is saying, oh, it's a subliminal about creative control and like timing and stuff, you know? And then, of course, after the video came out, all anybody was interested in asking him about was what the Death to Molly thing meant. So pretty much any time he ever had to talk about this song, he could always deflect it to drug culture and Molly and stuff. But I think adding that little Death to Molly thing at the end was an intentional distraction to kind of hide what Kendrick was really trying to say. So here's the thing. If Kendrick's not acknowledging it and nobody's really speculating on it, Drake can't acknowledge it. He's got to keep it all inside and just keep going on like nothing ever happened. There's this interview that I found last night, and I'm going to be honest with y'all, I did not like dig in and find out when this was and do any timing or anything like that, but that's not the point. So basically, this dude is explaining that back in the day, he had this interview with Drake, and Drake went off about Kendrick. But before they could ever air the interview, Drake's people call and they forced them to trash the interview.
So Drake came on our show, Sports Nation.
What year was this?
Don't quote me. 2011, 12. And it turned into him going at Kendrick Lamar. And really going at Kendrick Lamar. He was saying basically, him, Kendrick here, stop comparing me to the guy. 1 o'clock, they were like, we're not airing the interview. If we air that interview, he's not hosting the ESPYs.
Oh.
Now, I believe this actually happened in 2014, which would have been after the Control verse, but it just goes to show what lengths that Drake's people are going to go to protect his reputation. Like hold Kanye West hostage and make him do a concert to pretend that him and Drake are friends. So when the Control verse drops 9 months after Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, Drake can finally acknowledge out loud that he's got issues with Kendrick, and he can hide it behind the fact that, oh, Kendrick said my name in this song. I think that's why it looks like Drake took it more personal than anybody else, because it was personal. But he wasn't really mad at the Control verse. He was mad at Buried Alive Part 2. Now, as far as who's in the casket, I think it's Kendrick. Well, actually, K-Dot. Between the time that Kendrick met Drake in 2011 and when he dropped Good Kid, Mad City in 2012, Kendrick had changed a lot. He had met new people, seen new things, had new experience. Like he was really coming into his own while he was traveling and doing all this stuff leading up to releasing Good Kid, Mad City. In that short amount of time, he had caught up to Drake and he was able to do it without having to become Drake. K-Dot was the one that met Drake that night. K-Dot was the one that was envious of Drake that night. So no, I don't think that this video was about Molly. I think it's a funeral of Kendrick saying goodbye to K-Dot. That immature version of him that was envious of Drake needed to be laid to rest so that Kendrick could thrive. Back when he was still K-Dot, he said, if you was in a pine box, I would surely break the lock. I'd jump right in and I'd fall asleep because you were the death of me. K-Dot was willing to break the lock, jump in the box, fall asleep, and get himself buried alive. A year later, he's saying, you can remain stuck in a box. I'm going to break out and hide every lock. I'm going to break out and hide every lock. And he's been trying to stay true to himself ever since. So if somebody were to ask me, what do I think is one big event that helped shape the way that Kendrick has decided to handle fame? I would point him to that night when he met Drake and said he got initiated into the Matrix. So this was one hell of a journey, right? Like, I was all over the place making this damn video, but I was like, ooh, oh wait, that connects to this, and oh, ooh, ooh, ooh. It was actually really fun to make this video. But before I get out of here, I just want to say thank you so much to all of my new subscribers. I really, really, really appreciate your support. I'm really in an awkward place between two channels right now, and both of my channels are small, but the Confused playlist is meant to be the music channel, and then the other channel is meant to be my TV channel. But I did a little experiment, and I put the same video on both channels, and one channel, it got almost 2,000 views, and the other channel, it only got 20. So that's evidence to me that the algorithm is not recommending my videos at all. So I'm just going to keep putting them on both channels until I kind of figure it out a little bit more. But my goal is to have 2 separate channels. I don't know if that's really going to happen, and I feel like I'm rambling. If you enjoyed this video, next week I'm going to be digging into the poetic justice theory. Very excited about that video. So if you enjoyed this one, make sure that you come back. And the best way to make sure that the algorithm actually puts my video in front of you when I drop it is if you subscribe. But anything that you do, I really appreciate it. Anyway, I have to get out of here. Happy New Year once again, and I will see you next week. Bye.